very well. Welcome everybody to our panel, Silent Superpower, Science and AI Technology in International Relations. Thank you very much for being with us. I give a very warm welcome to all our audience and of course our wonderful panel of great experts, international experts on these issues. I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Erol Özvar. Did I pronounce that correctly? Özvar, okay. Well, Mr. Erol Özvar, President of the Council of Higher Education of Turkey, who's responsible for all of the higher education institutions in the country. I'm also very happy to acknowledge the presence of Anicia Peters, National Commission on Research, Science and Technology from Namibia, as well as Ambassador Tanel Sepp, Ambassador for Cyber Diplomacy from Estonia, and Tayfun Akarer, who is the president of the Turkish Informatics Association, and of course, Professor Erman Akili, who is from the Ankara Hasi Bayram Veli University. I'm sure I pronounced that completely wrong. Thank you. I have to get my Turkish pronunciation. A few classes I think I need. And Erdem Erkul, to my left, member of the Foreign Economic Relations Board, DEIK. Thank you very much for being here. It's a great pleasure to have you all. And we're going to talk about a very important and current subject. Everybody's talking about technology and science, and especially AI in the last few years. But I'd like to focus us on a few different themes here. And we don't have a lot of time, but this is a very big topic. We're going to have a whole conference about this. But we just have an hour and a half. So I'll try and keep enough time for questions, because this is a very nice setup in this room as a round table. It gives us a chance to have questions from the audience and have a lot of more participation than we usually have in our more scholastic style panels, where you have just a table and then some chairs in front. So the first segment I wanted to talk about innovation as a strategic frontier, right? And to think about how is it that science and technology have really become sort of key elements of national power. They're intrinsic to trying, for nations to try and, find their soft power and their technology prowess as part of their development paths and as part of their projection also of soft and even military power. So my question here is, how do countries manage that tension between technological competition and international scientific cooperation? And so perhaps we can start with Mr. Özvar, and since you're in charge of Turkey's higher education system, I'm sure that you have a lot of cooperation with different countries. And so, how do you find that? How do you manage that challenge between those two different competing goals?
Okay, thank you so much, Hector, and hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you here, and I would like to express, first of all, my gratitude to the Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs for organizing this wonderful forum. Upon your question, I would like to address the potential and risks that AI possess for all of us and share with you how we, as the Turkish Higher Education Council, respond to this innovation. I mean, that is AI and other technological innovation. AI, is a stimulating and encouraging area for all parties in the development of international collaborations. AI-assisted tools such as early warning systems, climate modeling platforms, and disaster response algorithms can be used by governments and international organizations for dealing with our shared concerns. The importance of AI-supported solutions to the environment, energy, military conflicts, famine, and epidemics that we face as a global society is undoubtedly beautiful. However, there are serious risks, and unintended consequences that AI may bring to the international system. One of the concerns is the erosion of trust. AI-driven systems, when used without transparency, can lead to misperceptions and strategic miscalculations among states and societies. A second major risk lies in the widening technological gap between countries and societies. Nations with advanced AI infrastructure may consolidate excessive influence over global norms and institutions, while others may face deepening forms of digital dependency. This asymmetry threatens to reinforce existing inequalities and undermine the principle of inclusive multilateralism. Dear guests, thirdly, the misuse of AI in surveillance, disinformation, and information warfare presents serious challenges to democratic values, individual freedoms, and the norms of the international law. In the absence of shared ethical frameworks and effective regulation, the international system of global community may become more fragmented and unstable. Addressing these challenges requires a collective global effort, yet it also calls for national-level resilience and strategic investment in science, technology, and education. In this regard, Turkey has taken decisive steps to strengthen its national capacity in AI and digital transformation. Recognizing the strategic nature of these developments, as the Council of Higher Education of Turkey, we are undertaking comprehensive initiatives to strengthen our national capacity in AI and to foster an ethical, cooperative and forward-looking digital vision in higher education. This responsibility of Turkish higher education today extends beyond national borders. In a world faced with transnational challenges you mentioned, such as climate change, pandemics, food insecurity, energy transitions, scientific collaboration is indispensable. In the implementation of such collaborations, universities can play a facilitating role. Naturally, universities are expected to prioritize the national strategies and interests of their respective countries. However, international problems can only be addressed through international cooperation. At this point, fostering scientific collaboration, including in the field of AI, is no longer merely an option, but a necessity. In the light of this, we, as the Council of Higher Education, have formed a working group on artificial intelligence to address every aspect of this scientific breakthrough. We came up with some ideas which eventually turned into a strategic plan. It will continue until 2028. We have concluded that establishing the required framework for AI training and education at our universities is a prerequisite. In 2023, we launched new programs at our universities because AI demands a wider education in areas including informatics, data science, and analytics, cognitive processes, and machine learning. Another, for example, information safety technologies, programming, and software engineering, and maybe cybersecurity and autonomous systems. There are now 84 AI-related education programs offered by 20 Turkish universities today. All of these associate and undergrad programs are open to all candidates who will take the university entrance exam in Turkey. Moreover, international students who will come to our country to study at Turkish universities can also register for these programs. We attach great importance to AI education being open and inclusive to everyone. I would like to express, dear Chairman, that our call is not limited to international students, but also to academics at international universities who are opposing the human tragedy in Gaza, Palestine, by exercising their right to freedom of expression and who are therefore subjected great pressure at their universities. In addition to establishing new AI-related programs, our universities allocate more resources to research in AI-related fields from university in our higher education system. Newly developed tools based on AI by our universities have begun to be used in education, agricultural activities, and some industrial sector in Turkey. While expanding our technological capacity, we never ignore universal values such as transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. I do believe that by promoting inclusive access to AI education and other technological programs and fostering global scientific cooperation, we can overcome the challenges of this area. Thank you so much for your
Thank you, Mr. Olvar.
attention.
So, Mr. Oslar just laid out what I think is a very comprehensive approach that Turkey has. It seems that you have both, you try and balance both areas.
Right.
So one, developing your internal capacities and also keeping that open to the world and sort of sharing and collaborating. I wanted to ask Ambassador Sepp, I know that Estonia has been at the forefront of a lot of digitalization, over the past 20, 25 years. And so how do you see that interplay between developing national power and international cooperation especially with regards to AI, but a little bit broader in all sort of, technological matters?
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. Usually, I start on a more personal note that Estonia is not just a digital nation, but we are also a singing nation. And I used to sing in different choirs, and we were always happy when there were more people in the audience than in the choir. So that's already a good success. So thank you, and my thanks really to the audience also. I was really listening to Mr. Osvar, and I was trying to put down a couple of notes for myself, and the points that I really want to stress here is that when we talk about AI and today's world, then we're really talking about the availability of data. How do you make sure that you have the real data? We've been working with really over 100 countries in the world. We see many countries coming to Estonia for some experience, and our main kind of message in a simplified way is to explain that digitalization of your society, it's not scanning a document into PDF. It's about working with data and how to really create that data. The second point here is, how do you then process the data? What's your computing capability? Do you have enough scientists, enough people who can write these algorithms? And this really takes me to the university part here. How do you really create this kind of workforce? But the third point, which is actually more important from the rest, is the political will to use the data. That once you have some solutions, how do you then really make sure that you transform these into sound policies and make really the difference for the people? Another point here is the question of trust. We have learned already years ago that one of the basic things underlying our success is really focusing on trust of the systems. Because without trust, people don't use it. If people don't use it, it's nonsense. So how, in today's world, how can you really build in the trust towards also AI-led systems? And this is where we're putting a lot of effort right now. One part is really the technical trust. And here, the elephant in the room is that we are all depending on the US-led companies. And also our Ministry of Justice and Digital Affairs is actually reviewing right now cloud computing policies, for example. But at the same time, this is the reality. So how do we also work with these prime companies to maintain that trust? And my last point here that I want to really mention here is that we need the scientists, but at the same time, we also need to take AI to the kids. So on our Independence Day, on 24th of February, our president announced a new program of taking AI as a learning method to schools. So we're working right now really intensively with many companies to make sure that we get the methodology right. Because if we don't teach the young kids also already from the elementary school, if we don't start from there, we are training people that are not fit for the present technologies.
Thank you, Ambassador. So maybe if I can have a follow-up question on that. You mentioned that the importance of the question of trust. And of course, when you're dealing with international partnerships, that question becomes very important, right? Because you have to figure out how do you build that sufficient level of trust that you can establish your national priorities with willing partners that you can maintain trust in at least over the medium, if not the long term. How have you managed that in Estonia? I mean, do you have partnerships across Europe, you have partnerships across the Atlantic, etc. How do you manage that? What's the best way to do that in your experience?
Look, as we consider ourselves as digital nation, so we're so dependent on the digital systems that we even don't have the ways to go back on paper systems. So if something really happens, I mean, digitalization has become really a security policy question. So we really are pursuing, and we have policies where we are trying to share our experiences so that more and more countries use similar systems, because that is the way how we can make also ourselves more secure. So we are really talking about, let's say, data flows across borders. That's something that we really tried to do within our EU presidency in 2017 within the European Union. It's difficult. I mean, and we're talking about AI systems right now, but we can't even talk about free flow of data across borders. So what are we talking then about in the end?
Right.
But yes, we have set a certain list of countries that we really put resources in building these partnerships, because the question is about resources. And Estonia is just 1.3 million people. And not all of them are techies, believe me, no. So we really have to pick and choose. And at the same time, we have to leverage the finances that we can find elsewhere. So we're working heavily with the Germans, with the French. We used to work heavily with Americans, but also the EU. So we have to find the resources that we can then leverage elsewhere. Thanks.
Right. I was at a conference recently, and one of the people at the conference was talking about the Indo-Pacific region and said, well, not only is this an important economic region, this should be a digital ocean, was the word that they used, a digital ocean. The idea that you would share data across the Indo-Pacific region and that you would have sort of shared repositories and shared technologies, etc. So, Mr. Erkul, I wanted to move to you and ask you, you are, your organization tries to foster trade and tries to foster economic links between Turkey and other countries. How do you see the future of this sort of, it's not trade, but it's this cooperation on digital items and digital services? What's your view on that?
Actually, thank you, Mr. President. And today, or maybe we can discuss about for future, not only technology side. And also, we know that science and AI, not just a engineering system, actually. Also, they have become core components of the national power today. And just as oil shaped and geopolitics in the 20th century, but nowadays, and data and algorithms and shape influence in the 21st. And also, AI and data are shaping in the digital economy, and also we are seeing. And scientific and technological progress is like an orchestra nowadays, and each country may play its own instrument. But to create harmony, and we need to a shared sheet of music, and otherwise we only listen and we only create noise. And also, we are thinking there are three strategic ways to manage this tension, because there is a tension. For example, I am also a tech entrepreneur on my another head, and all companies and all nations will compete in innovation. And only we are focusing on the innovation, and there is a biggest competition. But they must collaborate in ethics and safety and the long-term sustainability. But this creates a paradox while countries are racing for technological supremacy. In my opinion, is very important. And the global nature of AI's impact forces them to cooperate. For three things is very important for also for future. One of them, strategic co-opetition. For example, my council and our Foreign Economic Relations Board, we are talking each other, our council members, the new paradigm, and we are saying co-opetition. What does it mean, co-opetition? For example, the United States and EU compete in AI development, but collaborate ethical frameworks. Also, Korea, China, and Asia-Pacific nations engage both and joint research, and they are talking each other in the ethics and the other issues. And this is the new phase of technology diplomacy. Co-opetition, it means competitive cooperation. And we need to focus for future on not only scientific science, also economic science, competitive cooperation. And the second one, open science and shared infrastructure is very important. And for example, scientific data, models, and publications must be as open as possible. We are actually focusing open source models, they can work each other together. For example, in the global crisis, pandemics, climate change, disaster response, the countries must share AI models and data sets. Nowadays, many countries, they are trying to create their LLM, but they are using the data sets. And also they are using the many data for their economic growth, etc. But like these infrastructure, we need to share our data together. And the third one and the last one, science diplomacy. Power of diplomacy with the science. And we need mechanism for direct dialogue between scientists, engineers, and policymakers. And also initiatives like AI for Good build trust across the nations. Diplomacy is no longer conducted just by ambassadors, etc. It also is conducted through data sets, algorithms, and research centers. And we believe that not only systems are important, also for economic growth, for ethical issues, for fairness, we need to work together, we are thinking.
So that's very interesting what you say, Mr. Erkul, because I've been a professor at Berkeley for many years now and sort of very close to the Silicon Valley. And I can tell you one thing is that mixture of collaboration and competition and collaboration is something that we've observed in Silicon Valley companies the whole way. You might think that Microsoft and Oracle and Apple and OpenAI, they're all competing against each other. They are, but they also collaborate to a great amount. In fact, some of these same companies were co-founders of OpenAI, right? You had money from Microsoft, but also money from Musk and money from Oracle, et cetera, coming to do this. So it's not a new thing, right? But it's interesting to see it much more broadly as a question of collaboration and competition, but at a global level. as different countries try and find, but there's no way to do it on your own. Right?
Yeah, actually, and also, but AI is different maybe because okay, they are friends and there is an ecosystem. But AI is new era, and for example, 30 years ago, and we used and we started to use mobile phone and the computer, etc. Everyone has a mobile phone now and the computer, but we know that maybe after 5 years we will have AI agents, our own AI agents, and it means we need the more competition.
That's right. That's right. The idea of AI agents is that you have different types of AI models that work together, right? They hand over tasks one to the other, and this could be done even across countries. It doesn't have to be even within a single ecosystem, right?
Definitely.
That's a very interesting point. So I want to shift a little bit since we're talking about these ecosystems, and to think about what does it take in terms of national policies and international partnerships to foster these innovation and competition and cooperation ecosystems. So maybe Dr. Akar, maybe we can start with you. And what do you think? What do you need to put in place as a country, perhaps as a group of countries, to foster this kind of cooperation and competition at the same time?
Yes, thank you, dear Chairman, and everybody, hello. I was a chairman of International Communication Technologies Authority in Turkey, and I am an associate professor in university. This reason I have the same idea with dear Erol Özvar, because he explained very important subject in Turkey's universities. And in my opinion, today, artificial intelligence is the most important subject in ICT, information communication technologies sector. In the near future, many business areas and the business relationship will change rapidly, according to me. And artificial intelligence, again, can create an alternative form of political organization for societies. With the historical analysis ability of AI, the order of past civilization, the problem they faced can be modeled. In this way, a consistent projection can be presented to the today. The argues that solution can be created for global problems arising from geo-economical and socio-political inequity through artificial intelligence, according to me. And artificial intelligence, again, increases the accuracy and efficiency of decision-making process by processing a large amount of data rapidly. Thus, AI offers states strategic advantages that will predict advantages that will trends, social movement, and potential conflicts in the world. AI has also significantly changed and transformed cybersecurity. Especially cyber security is very important for AI. Why? Because advanced algorithms detect cyber threats in real time, thus making significant contribution to the task of protecting national security infrastructure. Finally, I want to say for international departments, because in addition, AI-powered tools in diplomacy, such as chatbots and virtual assistants, and can provide diplomats with advanced training by simultaneous diplomatic scenarios. If I have a time, I want to say my opinions.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So in a sense, what I hear you say is AI itself
Yeah.
could be a tool for developing these arrangements, these agreements, and this sort of new way of collaborating because of its own capabilities. That's a very interesting point. Professor Akili, I wonder what your ideas around this is. What do we need to put in place so that this kind of international cooperation that's linked to national policies can flourish?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, dear guests, participants. It's a great pleasure and privilege for me to being here today and addressing such a distinguished audience. So once again, I would like to thank Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs for their very kind invitation. Dear Mr. Chair, actually, I would like to answer your question, if I may,
Sure.
with two separate yet interconnected perspectives. First and foremost, we need to understand the nexus between the national policies and the international partnerships. That nexus is quite essential. It's essential for establishing a profound ecosystem, an innovative, dynamic ecosystem with that kind of ecosystem that's able to balance competition with collaboration. First, the states has the key role for establishing a structural environment for encouraging innovation domestically. But for doing so, states need to take the step for creating such measures. First and foremost, investing STEM educations, investing money in STEM educations, doing targeted research and development fundings. As Turkey, we are quite lucky actually, thanks to our president, our universities have chance to apply that kind of funds thanks to the higher education of Turkey, and also setting the strategic priorities. By doing so, it's quite easy for states for mitigating the market failures, providing the protection for the intellectual property, and also developing a talent pool, which is crucial for the innovation itself. Apart from the national policies, the situation of the international partnerships also have paramount importance due to the transnational nature of the innovation. Today, we are living in a more and more interconnected world. So without international partnerships, it's quite hard to say about development in the cutting-edge technologies. By international partnerships, from multilateral research initiatives to bilateral technological agreements, from data ventures to open science exchanges, those kind of attempts facilitate, if I may address, a strategic interdependence. I know interdependence approach was a bit old term in the basis of the international relations. It is related with the Cold War era, but I may also add international systems approach. Actually, we are living in a technopolar world. Contrary to the bipolar world system of the Cold War era, right now we are living in a technopolar world. That's why a strategic interdependence is essential. So, what is strategic interdependence? Actually, it's a process that states are competing in certain domains, yet simultaneously working together in other domains for mutual benefit. Likewise, climate change, AI governance, international terrorism, pandemics, etc. That's why international partnerships are essential. This situation actually has another quite opportunity for the states. It facilitates science diplomacy. And when we are talking about diplomacy, we are talking about peace. It has the capacity for establishing a profound trust between the nations. And this process also enhances collective capacity while preserving the national interests. That's my first part. And if I may, I quickly add the second perspective, dear Chair. 2 days ago, NATO published Science and Technology Trends of 2024-2025. At this report, one of the top macro trends is AI race and quantum supremacy. So, as I said so, we are living in a technopolar world. So states has to have a certain amount of capacity, but on the other hand, we shouldn't miss that reality that the democratization of the technology will bring the peace and sustainable stability. Also, I would like to mention some notes from that report quite briefly. In this report, it's said that nations with cutting-edge AI technology or quantum capacity will have an advantage when it comes to withstand external shocks. Like 2 months ago, one of the very last executive orders of the Biden administration, it was the exportation of the cutting-edge chips, semiconductors for the world. And according to that executive order, right now we are witnessing a 3-tiered listed world. Tier 1 countries, which are considered the closest AI for the United States, they have no limitation for having the chips, the cutting-edge chips for doing the most advanced AI research and developments. The second-tier countries, they do not have the luxury to receive that kind of cutting-edge chips, but they only have the privilege to receive the mediocre level chips. And the tier 3, they are the least countries that will not enjoy the chip technology. One of them are like China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Well, couple days after this executive order, as you may have followed up from the news, a new large language model hit the market called DeepSeek. Well, the announcement of the DeepSeek has created quite a damage, 1.8 trillion United States dollars for the US economy. And I am just passing quite swiftly. I don't want to take long, but the thing is, after that step, the tier 1 countries started to banning the DeepSeek. Why? They also said that it is about the data breaches, the data privacy. But in the end, as I said at the beginning, we are living in a technopolar world. And even if you like or not, we are going to need to take a part in this technological divide. And it's getting deeper and deeper day by day. That's why international cooperation is a must more than ever if you want to keep the peace and a sustainable stability.
Thank you very much.
so much.
Thank you very much. So I want to shift a little bit in our discussion now. It's all related, obviously, but I want to shift a little bit more towards the care that we have to take with these new technologies. And perhaps we can start with Dr. Peters and to talk a little bit about what are the urgent areas in which we should, as governments and as international organizations and through international cooperation, seek to establish sort of ethical guidelines and criteria for managing this new technology.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. In my daily world, I am responsible for setting the national research priorities. I'm also responsible for funding, and I'm responsible for regulating research, science, technology, biotechnology, whatever, biosafety. But let's start off with this. I got some time back a request from a AI scientist from a university in the United States saying, we want to set up an AI lab. I said, why Namibia? Well, you've got a desert. In fact, we've got 2 deserts. I said, sure, but there are other countries with deserts. Why Namibia? Oh, you don't have regulations. That was during the Biden administration,
Right.
when there was still guardrails. And I said, okay, what is this technology? I listened. Think COVID, think 10 times worse. In terms of spread and in terms of what it could do. We, of course, said no. But there's a very fine line between, for instance, trying to balance innovation versus ethics and responsible AI. And this is where we are finding ourselves, right? We're pushing the boundaries. And of course, the US now has an executive order that took off the guardrails, right? So before they were looking at other countries to do some of the more risky AI developments in. So if we're looking at ethics, I mean, ethics is essentially about harm. Who are you going to harm, right? And that's where responsible AI comes in, the human-centered AI, and that's also where the trustworthiness and the safety comes in. But having to define this right now for our models, like we see already that we got some explainable AI is building in the reason into some of the Gen AI models. But it's also about transparency. I find that the ethics also has to do with data and data sovereignty. It's a fallacy that we all think that we're all sharing data equally because we're not, right? In Africa, for instance, we have what, less than 5% of the data sets, the training sets that we're having comprises African data. Now, whose fault is that? We can certainly not fault the developers or big tech for that, right? But also, sometimes what we do is we hold on to the data. It's about data sovereignty. We don't share as freely as we think we should be, because we're also thinking about who can harm. I think, for instance, if we are going to avail all of our data, we've seen in research some of the exploitative measures that come from everybody having access to your data, right? So, and then of course, within the African continent, we simply don't have the curated and high quality data, right? Another thing is the unequal sort of developments. Only 5% of African AI researchers have access to compute infrastructure, according to UNDP. Let me cite them. But last week, we had the AI Summit on Africa in Kigali, and there were a number of declarations made, and we had some indexes, etc. We had the AI Fund and the Africa AI Council, and also the Declaration on AI. But one of the things that I think was the more significant announcement was that Cassava Technologies have actually partnered with Devia, and they are going to start the first AI factories within Africa. Because more than anything, the talent, the funding, the conducive regulatory frameworks, like you were talking about, the strategies and policies and so on, we really need the compute infrastructure. And this is why I think that this is also part of the ethics of it, right? So because, for instance, if we keep on being left out as developers, as those who have a say, as, you know, as part of being part of the data sets, then I think that it is still harming one part of the world. And ethics also is, for me, it's very subjective, right? Whose ethical standards are we following? And this is why I find it very important that we're part of the conversation at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Peters. So you really raise something very interesting when you talk about the way in which data is shared, and this is something that also Mr. Erkul was talking about, open models, open source models, and open science and shared data. But it is true that we have regulatory frameworks in different parts of the world that have completely different objectives. So just to be very simplistic about it, the US model, the data belongs mostly to the companies that use it. In the European model, the objective is privacy, and so what they're trying to do is protect the individual user's privacy. And in the Chinese model, everything belongs to the state, right? So you have three completely different and competing models, and that makes it very difficult then to share data. How would a European company share data with a Chinese company when the fundamental regulatory models are in complete opposition, right? And so the same thing when you're starting to develop national national priorities and national strategy, you have to think about how do I protect data, and for what? For whom do I protect the data? Right? That's a very important plea. So, Dr. Maharaj, I wanted to talk to you also, Maharaj. I wanted to ask you about this. So what do you think is the kind of regulatory frameworks that you think are still not there? Because we have some things. We have the United Nations Digital Compact. We have the OECD principles. We've got the European Union's work. We have some different regulatory schemes in different parts of the world, in India. What are we missing, or are all the parts there and we just need to put them together like some kind of Lego, or are we missing big chunks of the regulatory framework?
Thank you so much, and also I would like to acknowledge the government of Turkey for what has been a fantastic ADF 2025, and we at the United Nations. We at the United Nations Technology Bank for the Least Developed Countries benefit as well from an extraordinary partnership with the government of Turkey. And before I respond, perhaps just to note that the United Nations Technology Bank for the Least Developed Countries, we have a simple mandate and remit, and which is to leverage science and technology and innovation to help the least developed countries, or the 44 poorest and most vulnerable countries on the planet, fast-track their development. And it's a pleasure to be here on this panel, because AI is really creating a new form of geopolitical power based on data, infrastructure, and models. And the discussion and the engagement that we have thus far really doesn't reflect the reality faced by these 44 least developed countries. 32 are in Africa, and I'm happy Dr. Peters spoke about Africa and issues related in Africa. And it reminds me, for those who would have read Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, and he started the book by saying it was the best of times. And it's indeed the best of times, because you have the Magnificent Seven companies that reached a market capitalization of $1 trillion US. And notwithstanding the losses that have been taking place recently, capitalization is still for each of them over $1 trillion US. So it's the best of times. And then I think about Burundi, where internet penetration is 5%.
Right.
Okay? So the best of times and the worst of times. And when we think about AI, we must think about an inclusive multilateralism, an inclusive governance, and an inclusive approach, Hector, to these policy frameworks. I think that's important to emphasize. Why is it important? Because we in the UN, we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and about being or ensuring that no one is left behind. And that's a good slogan, and I believe in it. But on issues related to technology and innovation, and respect to AI, Ambassador, the LDCs, they're not being left behind. The risk is that 1 billion people risk being left completely out of the game. And therefore, it's about using AI and technology and innovation for not complicated algorithms, but agriculture, livelihoods, MSMEs. And so therefore, when we think about policy and regulatory frameworks, we have to push beyond a global compact. That's one. Secondly, it has to be treated as a global public good. That's really important. And thirdly, we need to have models for regulatory and policy framework. So we at the UN Technology Bank, we were at the African Development Bank just last week discussing regional approaches to boosting the policy and regulatory framework for LDCs in Africa, which in the main don't exist. So that's one. And secondly, it's really good to hear about the leaps and bounds, because I live in Turkey and I see the fantastic progress on the technology front. And therefore, it is important to use countries like Turkey, which has been very generous to the LDCs. I see the ambassador, His Excellency, from the Republic of Korea, another strong partner and friend of least developed countries, to build programs of capacity building. And I'm happy we have people like yourself, sir, from centers of excellence, because my question then is, how do we use your centers of excellence and your institutions of higher learning to create opportunities for people at master's level, policymakers, to come and see what is being done in Turkey, Republic of Korea, and other places? So to my mind, a couple things just to recap. One, it's about inclusive global governance. Secondly, it's about building model policy and regulatory frameworks that others can quickly adapt to. And it's not only the LDCs. I'm from the Caribbean, and the ambassador from Estonia spoke about him coming from a small country, but 1.3 million people is a big country by Caribbean standards, right? So some of the islands would be 100,000, 200,000 people. It's like a village here in Turkey or in Mexico, all right? But in those countries as well, the risk of them being completely left out is very, very high. And therefore, we need, when we think about having this engagement and this discussion, it's not only amongst the Magnificent Seven or the well-capitalized countries, but ensuring those who are being completely left behind, they are at the table as well. And what is the advantage or benefit? In addition to being a global public good, right? The fact that is that it's a market of 1 billion people. So there are good business opportunities. And it makes good business sense if we are all lifted, especially in this space. I mean, I have some other thoughts, but I will stop for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Maharaj. I think it's really interesting. I think when I think about the digital divide among countries, it's not just one digital divide. We have several digital divides, right? It's sort of when I don't like the term Global South very much, because I think it obscures all of those differences that there are within emerging markets and developing countries. And what you laid out is exactly that. You do have the Magnificent Seven, and then you have Europe and leading countries like India also, who have very high levels of technology. And then you have the next level, but then you have 2 or 3 levels below that, and you have to have different kinds of regulatory frameworks and policies to foster the development of those capabilities. And sometimes the issue isn't even having a good regulatory framework, it's just having connectivity. It's just having access to, not the models, just access to computers and access to the internet, right? So you've got different levels of work there. I wonder, Dr. Özvar, if you can tell us a little bit more about how do you see, for example, in the case of Turkey, how do you collaborate with least developed countries to try and help them to be able to use the advances that you're making in order to develop their own frameworks and not be left behind or left out, as Dr. Maharaj talks about?
So I may answer this question by putting all things into 2 categories. One is education, the other research. Okay. Regarding research, I may say that Turkey, the Turkish universities right now are open to collaborate with international universities and also other institutions. And also, as the Council of Higher Education, we urge and push all our universities to actually cooperate with international ones. And the second strategy developed by the Council of Higher Education is that we are trying to expand the quotas within Turkish universities to accept international students, not only from a specific countries, but also from all over the world. Right now, in Turkey, in Turkish universities, there are more than 340,000 students enrolled within Turkish universities. Their origins from different ethnics and nationalities. Maybe we have more than, I mean, the 189 countries. I mean, they are coming from 198 countries. So we have a huge plurality and diversity in terms of students. And also we are trying to open much more spaces and quotas for international students. You know, because there is a huge, I mean, the gap between, you know, between the countries in terms of, you know, in terms of development. Okay, so there are lots of candidates in the world trying to find an opportunity to study at university level. But it is not easy for them to find this sort of opportunity because of the cost of education. We are offering, I mean, the higher education opportunity at the affordable, let's say, cost, especially for the people, for the candidates, okay, who would like to study coming from, especially from African countries or Turkish world, and from other, let's say, region of the world, who especially are relatively, I mean, who have the poverty, right? So we do think that accessibility, access to university makes a huge positive contribution to this inequality among the nations and society. So that's why we are trying to keep our doors open for international candidates. So this is, I mean, this is our main, actually, strategy we pursue at the level of higher education. So, as I mentioned, we created many programs regarding, I mean, the AI, right? And other, let's say, high-tech programs. And I think if we are thinking we are thinking like that. I mean, if we welcome international candidates coming from relatively, let's say, poor countries or developing countries, we do think that we actually contribute to closing gaps, right? Between, I mean, not only in some countries, maybe in most of countries in the world. Let me come to and let me move to the second point. I mean, regarding research in AI and other digital technologies. Actually, you know, we are very in the connection with the international institutions and other representatives of higher education all over the world. We encourage our faculty members to cooperate, especially with international colleagues, especially in sort of areas. And we are trying to create much more, I mean, the further financial funds for our Turkish researchers, okay, to interact, exchange with international colleagues on this, especially in this specific area. And I have to say that we created some intensive incentives for international colleagues to study, to come to Turkey, okay, to get a seat, to get a position at Turkish universities. And we do insist on the fact that if we get much more international scholars, especially at risk to Turkish universities, we do believe that we will grow faster than as usual. And the third one, the third point that I would like to stress is that we created some kinds of models making easy for researchers to exchange, to interact with international faculties. What's that? It's a sort of joint project by co-funding by the parties. Okay. Especially we created this sort of project on AI. And also I got, let's say, from our government to allocate much more funds, especially to develop our skills of Turkish students in AI. So, I mean, if our research are open to international collaboration within the AI subject or area, we do believe that we will develop together. So openness and inclusivity are so important and the key concept that we should think on it, I think.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive and very useful. So I'm going to wrap things up a little bit, and then so what I hear is that you really want to help in order to get development and get this international collaboration. You've got 3 different levels. One, of course, is the training and research piece that you were just mentioning right now. Then there is the investment, which you were mentioning, Jodat, a moment ago, which is very important. And of course, it's different size of investments and it's different mechanisms within countries. It can be like in a country like Turkey, it was put in a very, very substantial levels of investment, but it could be also investments from things like the UN Bank that is investing in at least developed countries and everything in between, right? And those could be joint partnerships, joint ventures between universities, within the global north, the global south, or whatever we want to call them. But there's a lot of potential there. And then the third piece has to do with regulation. And what I've sort of heard is we have to be careful about making the regulation useful and specific to the country. It doesn't mean that if you're a country that doesn't have any regulation, well, you have to have some because you don't want to be just the guinea pigs of people trying to experiment on things that might be quite dangerous. So you've got to have that. But also, you don't just want to copy what was done in Europe or what was done in China, what was done in the US, and just bring it to your country. You want to have something that is specific and useful to your own And balanced, exactly. And that balances the need, your need for development and innovation with your ethical and other kinds of policy aspects. So it's been a fantastic discussion. I want to just wrap up by giving each one of you a minute just to give us your closing thoughts, something maybe that you haven't been able to say that you would love to say to our audience and to each other. Please, Professor Tayfun, start with you.
Thank you, dear Chairman. You said digital divided is very important, all the countries, especially the ICT sector. But AI can some solution the subject. But especially I want to say most two important subject for international relationships. First of all, AI is also be used by terrorists today.
Yeah.
It is very important. This reason, international cooperation between countries has become necessary. It is very important. Again, another subject, there are currently no international regulation between governing to military use of AI. Second subject, it is very important. This lack of regulation poses a threat to global stability. In military, application AI is having an impact that is changing international norms. For example, autonomous drones, robot soldiers, and other AI-enabled technologies are fundamentally changing the nature of warfare. It is very important. As a result, the effect of AI on global politics for international are quite extensive. AI can change the balance of power in the global hierarchy by providing technological superiority to the states that use it skillfully. It is very important. Finally, I want to say, what is next for AI? According to me, now getting the fundamentally right data in now. New, different tracks for different courses.
Yep.
Next, second, there is an agent for that. Finally, I want to say, in ICT sector, hardware is eating the world because a lot of different types of hardwares. According to me, AI is promise depend or more than software. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ambassador Sepp, would you like to give your closing remarks? Just a minute, please.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to put a bit of attention also on public-private partnership. And I think that current this Trump-Musk tandem shows actually quite an extreme what this could be. At the same time, I mean, public-private partnership really comes really out in questions like supply chain, or really our dependency on technology as government. And I do believe that this deserves much more attention and much more deeper discussions than my 1 minute right now here. But one other aspect here is when we talk about AI governance, and then PPP comes here extremely well into play. Let's not forget why we're using AI. Let's not forget this human-centric approach that we're really trying to create services for the people that the governments can use. And there we also get the inclusivity where we really have to take into account the views of the academia and other interested groups here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Peters?
Okay, so I'm co-chairing the African Scientific Research and Innovation Council under the AU's Africa 4IR working group. We did a scoping over all of the 54 countries in Africa as to where is AI and emerging technologies being used, and it's everything from agriculture to international relations to just about all sectors. But one of the things, and we want to, of course, expand on the AI talent, especially in scientific research, and build expertise in that. But one of the things that we found that many of the countries are struggling with, and this is where I think win-win partnerships can come in, is on the issue of power. Because we didn't speak about that, right? But I mean, the compute infrastructure, data centers, they're extremely power hungry. Yeah. And the continent of Africa is so power insecure and water insecure for that matter as well. But it also offers such boundless potential for green data centers, etc. And this is why I want to say, you know, just following up on your, you know, expanding, when you're offering type of scholarships or have them come here, you're also expanding sort of your inclusive research focus areas and diversity. And I think that we should really look at those opportunities as well in win-win partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Maharaj, would you like to closing thoughts?
Yeah, just 3 points I wanted to make. One, treat AI as a global public good. 2, invest in STI capacity building focused on the least developed countries. And thirdly, partner with us and other like-minded institutions to boost policy and regulatory framework and capacities in the least developed countries. Just 3 points. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Akili, or Professor Akili?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I would like to wrap up my final words with two-level analysis, state and its system. As our distinguished participants already mentioned that AI is the technology of the future. And we are witnessing a precedented heights in the ICT technologies. But it's essential to understand one thing, that due to the changing nature of the international system, states has to redefine themselves as well. Because the classical definition of the sovereign state of the 1648 Westphalia Treaty, today it's no more. Today, if a state considers themselves as a sovereign state, they need to have the capacity for their data protection, have the capacity for creating their very own algorithms, and have the capacity for their creating their semiconductors and chips. That's why it's essential to have a certain amount of capacity. But please do not take my words wrong. While I am saying this, it's also essential to understand the international cooperation. Now it comes to the system level analysis. Like-minded countries who are cooperating in international partnership through the science diplomacy for developing joint projects in the AI and other cutting-edge technologies, they will have the capacity for mastering a pool of expertises and preserving their collaborative capacities. I also mentioned the democratization of the technology, which is quite essential for the sustainable peace and stability. On the other hand, the global cooperation, the global audience must also focus on one more thing, a regulation, a binding resolution, if I may address that, a binding resolution for the usage of the AI in the worldwide, especially on those 3 specific topics: defense, autonomous weapon systems, in more specifically lethal autonomous weapons, for the accountability, the surveillance, border controls. As you know, the machine learning systems has the capacity for the facial recognition, but time to time, unfortunately, we are witnessing discrimination in some parts of the world due to their inheritance or their color of their skin. And last but not least, the misinformation. As the professor mentioned, terrorist organizations has the capacity for using the large language models as well. That technology has lifted the language barrier. The technology has provided a radio, a TV station, and a studio without no cost.
Yeah.
So it's essential to remember one thing: AI technologies are has paramount importance, but they are double-edged swords. This technology could be used in a quite profound and good way for the common good of the humanity. On the other hand, God forbid, we would witness a more global scale conflict due to the cutting-edge technologies. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Erkul, your last words?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Actually, today, 90% of advanced AI capabilities are concentrated in less than 10 countries. Also, another statistics, 75% of global AI investment is made by only 5 countries. We are thinking it's not just a gap, it's a geopolitical risk. Maybe we can say about this for imagine an AI is a new type of electricity, and it powers everything, but if only some countries have the grid, the rest remain in the dark. And what can we offer that? Maybe from Antalya, from this summit actually. And it's important, that's why we would like to propose one immediate and practical step that policymakers and global institutions can take. We can make together this, the establishment of a global AI trust and interoperability platform. Because there is no platform nowadays. Every country they are trying to make something, etc. And it's important. We are seeing. I want to say we need to say this argument from Antalya, and let us remember science may be silence, but its impact is thunders.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Erkul.
you.
Mr. Özvar, would you like to, your last closing words?
This is wonderful. I'm in the table and I'm the speakers and also chairman. I would like to actually, for all speakers, I learned really, the different parts of the AI and also digital, let's say, areas. Maybe I just added something to data. Of course, there's a huge gap among the countries in terms of collecting data and also digital capacities, right? No doubt. But still, most of countries haven't yet completed digital processes. So there are still thousands, millions and millions data that are waiting for process.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so this sort of, this part of the reality would be an anchor for us to think about the gap among the countries. This would be a good diplomatic tool to use against oligopoly powers. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You're right. There's lots of. Thank you. So we have a little bit of time for questions. Maybe start with a couple of questions from the audience. Yes.
Yeah, there are two contradictions, and I want a quick opinion on how to resolve them. One, most of you made a call for international cooperation. Yeah, there are two contradictions. I want your opinion on how to resolve them. One, most of you made a call for international cooperation, but at the same time, several countries, including Turkey, including my country, India, including many other countries, are very strong on data sovereignty and not to have their data to go outside their country. How can you have international cooperation if you are at the same time campaigning for data sovereignty as a basis of God? The second contradiction I want you to resolve is that all of you talked about using AI for harnessing development, solving problems like climate change, pandemics, etc. But the godfathers of AI, those who created the modern AI like Geoffrey Hinton, Demis Hassabis, who got Nobel Prize, and many others, including Elon Musk and others, they are most worried about the existential risk that will come from AI when the AI goes to the next level, which can happen in the next 3 years, which is smarter than human conscious AI. Now, if you focus on the benefits of AI and completely ignore the existential risk, US, China, and the big countries are not going to allow you to make the international regulation for AI, which you all want. But at the same time, if you only focus on the existential risk and don't look at the aspirations of developing countries, Global South is not going to allow you to make the international regulation for AI. How do you resolve the contradiction between the scientists' concern for existential risk at the next level of AI and Global South concern for aspirations and the AI for opportunities and social good? These two contradictions, please answer.
I think you just blew up our table.
Certainly.
But yes, one more question over there.
Thank you very much for your wonderful contributions. Actually, I would like to just contribute, not question, for 1 minute. My name is Nezraki Shirman from Selçuk University. First of all, the concept or the dominant idea should be the cooperation, because as was mentioned by all the speakers, the internet is a global common. So we need to protect the future of humanity actually depends on this technology. So the key concept here is cooperation rather than competition. As Professor Erdem stressed, actually, competition in cooperation is the key concept, because also through cooperation we can overcome the challenge of digital divide. Otherwise, it is impossible. But unfortunately, the securitization, or maybe more correct concept is the militarization of digital world, is the biggest threat, and strategic competition is also the same threat. So we have to cooperate. Digital nationalism is a threat to, as Mr. Stressed, is a threat to global common. So there was the theory by Joseph Nye, the complex interdependence in the cyber global governance. He proposed a fragmented global cyber governance, but in practice, it has some deficiencies. Instead, the global cooperation, not only among the states, but among all the stakeholders, states, companies, international organizations, etc. So cooperation should be the key concept rather than competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So who wants to take the big hot potato question that we just got? Yes, okay, so I'll go over here and then to you.
Only I can say maybe for your comments, etc. For example, just as we have AITA for aviation security and safety, maybe we can create some new paradigm, and like AITA, we need a similar structure for AI safety and security for our future. And I can say it like this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank
Professor
you,
Akili.
Mr. Chair. I also would like to thank you for a provocative question that moves off the table. Well, to be honest, that existential problem, that's actually erupts from the nature of the AI. As you said, so the thing for the data sharing, while I was doing the suggestion for maybe a binding resolution for the regulations for the usage of the AI, data is the soul of the AI. if we are willing to have a successful result or even a simple machine learning system algorithm to a more complex deep learning algorithm, we need to have a qualityful AI. But the thing is, I also mentioned about a certain large language model that has been banned from the most of the European countries. Their so-called accusation is data breach. Well, the reality is it's a political ban, but the thing is we cannot underestimate the black box situation of that kind of models. So the transparency and the accountability of the countries are essential. We need to have first a regulation, a binding regulation for countries to be transparent and for accountable that kind of situations. Because you say so, India is one of the most populated countries in the world. And frankly, when I consider about just a mere like step counts of their smartwatches of the Indians, it even make billions of data in every second, in every minute. So it's that kind of situation. It feeds the big data situation in the international system. That's why the international community must act swiftly to create a binding regulation for countries, not just for the global majority, but also for the West, East, North, and South, for the whole world.
Thank you. Ambassador Sepp and then Mr. Maharaj.
Thanks so much. I mean, with international cooperation, it's our leaders who are really pursuing that, and we give some ideas, and then the politicians decide. So I think we need to educate much more our politicians also. And I would actually kind of bounce back one question that I heard from one discussion in Estonia on AI. And that really relates to the trust and kind of future. And the question is, would you trust AI to cook you a dinner?
No.
I mean, this goes to so many different layers here, actually. But this is just to show what kind of questions actually we need to reach at one point. Thanks.
I don't know if I'll trust it to cook the dinner, but I have asked it to give me the menu. Mr. Bakaran.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't comment on the issue of data sovereignty because that's an ongoing debate that will take time to resolve. But I see the contradiction, sir, only as a temporary contradiction. And it depends on the perspective that you use. I mean, in development cooperation, in banking, in finance, and investment, the question often is, what's in it for me, right? And why do it? And an inclusive approach to AI, I spoke about the least developed countries. It's a market of 1 billion people. It's a market of 1 billion people. And therefore, it's good for everyone, right? For that inclusive approach. It's good for everyone for that capacity building. And it's good for everyone for them to benefit. Because whether it's trade in goods or services, everyone benefits. And that's, I think, the message that we need to convey much more aggressively. So one has to think big, one has to think inclusive. And by the way, it's good for you, and it's good for your bottom line. Thank you.
Right. Very good. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So I think that on the data controversy, as we are fighting to be included, to have our data as part of the training sets, I think that question, somebody said, will resolve itself eventually, because I think it's about inclusion, and right now it is about exclusion. And I think that's where partnerships can come in towards the curation of data and data sources. Now, on the existential threat, of course, we're trying to make models that are more explainable, that are more trustworthy, human-centered, but we're also seeing emergence of deception amongst the AI models right now, right? I mean, even I'm asking some of the, just the ChatGPT and DeepSeek, you know, are you capable of deception? And they lie to me. They don't even say I'm an LLM, whatever. You know, they're asking me, why do you want to know, right? So, and I think, and I saw that OpenAI actually has some users, human users, to sort of moderate to see that the models don't come too close, etc. But I think that there are several things to be concerned about as we're evolving. But I also think that we shouldn't run away and hide because it has so many good things, and we should continue to sort of just mitigate, you know, those unintended consequences, because I'm a specialist in human-computer interaction. That's my specialization. So I look at human-centered sort of AI that serves as an augmentation tool. And so that's where I would like to keep it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're 5 minutes over the time. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the government of Turkey and specifically the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for organizing this fantastic diplomacy forum and for giving us a chance to do this table. There's a big challenge when you have a table of 7 great experts, because you have an abundance of talent, right? And no AI to coordinate it, right? So we have to use not artificial, but natural intelligence, and there's never enough of it. So I want to thank you all, but it would have been, I would have loved to hear much more from each one of you. But thank you very much for participating, and it was a great panel, and I think we all learned a lot. So thank you.
Great panel.
Thank you
so much.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Pleasure for all your